Hi everyone and welcome. As per always, thank you so much for clicking on today's video and I hope you guys stay tuned until the end. My name is Esther Vincent, also known as LiaMia if you guys ever want to search for me on social media. And today I would like to bring you guys a crime story from my country, Malaysia. The past two videos had been about the supernatural ghost mystery stories, and for this week, for today, I thought I will bring you guys a crime, something that had really happened, something that had taken place in my country, Malaysia. This is a crime that took place when I was a very little girl, when I was in my primary school. This crime took place in the early 2000s. So I still remember hearing about this crime reports in my television, my home television, the newspapers, and feeling a little freaked out because at that young age, I felt like this is so scary. Well, come to think about it, it is scary up to now because it involves real people, real lives. And so, yep, this is the case of Canny Ong. Canny Ong, or her real name, Canny Ong a.k.a, was born on the 18th of June in 1974 in the city of Ipoh from the state Perak, Malaysia. She was a Malaysian who was working as an information technology analyst in San Diego, California, USA. Her mother, Pearly Viswanathan, was a Malaysian Chindian, meaning she's a mix of Indian and Chinese, and Canny Ong has a sister named Elsie Ong. Their father's name is Ong B. Jang. Canny is also married. Her husband's name is Brandon Ong. Now, Brandon was born to Singapore Chinese parents who have migrated to the US, and they have settled in US for more than 20 years. Canny went to the US to continue her further studies, and she studied in a university from Hawaii. Canny later met Brandon in Los Angeles while seeking a job over there, and finally the couple ended up getting married in 2001 and they settled in San Diego, California. That's a little background on Canny Ong, and unfortunately enough, Canny Ong is the victim in the crime that I'm about to bring you guys today. Moving on to the perpetrator, the convicted criminal in this crime. His name is Ahmad Najib bin Aris. Ahmad Najib, which I would just refer to as Najib, moving on, was born in 1976 in the city of Muar, the state of Johor, Malaysia. He was the second child out of 4 siblings. Najib only studied up to year 3 in high school. As per Malaysian standards, he dropped out of the final 2 years that he has to complete in secondary school due to poverty in his family. He dropped out of school so that, he can work and help his family out. He is said to be a very hard-working guy. And in 1998, he moved to Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia, from the city he was living at that time, which is Muar. Najib later gets married and has 2 children. In Kuala Lumpur, he was working as an airplane cabin cleaner with the Malaysian Airlines from the year 2000. According to the people who knew him, people who worked with him, they mentioned him as being a person with a really good heart, a good charactered person, very responsible, and overall a good guy. Yeah, right. As I mentioned, after their marriage, Canny and her husband Brandon had settled down in San Diego, California. Now, Canny's father, Ong B. Zhang, falls terribly ill due to cancer. It is said that his health was going through a really bad condition, so Canny and her husband Brandon Ong decide to fly from San Diego, USA, all the way to Malaysia to pay Canny's father a visit. So Kenny and her husband would fly down to Malaysia on the 1st of June 2003. Once Kenny was here and visiting her father, staying with her family, it is said that Kenny's dad was getting much better. He was feeling good. His health was improving. Seeing that the father is feeling better, seemed to be getting better from his illness, Kenny was to fly back to the USA on the 14th of June 2003. The night of 13th June 2003. The night before Kenny's flight back to the US, some of Kenny's friends, Kenny's mom and her sister decide to throw her a farewell party because they are not sure when they will get to meet Kenny back again once she flies back to the US. So they decide to throw her like a small get-together farewell party in a restaurant located in Bangsar Shopping Mall. Kenny and her mom came in a car and they parked it in basement 1. They came to the elevator, then Kenny realized that she left the parking ticket inside of the car. Then they realized, it's not important for now, let's go and join the party. So they reached the party somewhere around 8:30 at night. After a fun-filled night, somewhere around 10 to 10:15 p.m., Kenny realized that her mother is getting tired, so she decided that she would drop off her mother back at home and she would come back and join her friends with the farewell party. Since they are going back, they would have to pay for their parking ticket at the parking ticket pay machine. Remembering that she forgot the parking ticket in her car, she asks her mother to just wait near the parking ticket machine and that she will just run by to the car, get the ticket, and they will come back. About 20 minutes pass by and Kenny does not return. Now this gets the mother a little worried, so she tries calling Kenny and the call goes unanswered as well. As the phone call was not answered, Kenny's mom decides to go to where their car was parked just to see what is taking her so long. Once when she reached basement 1, exactly to the parking spot where they had their car, she would see that her car, the car that Kenny drove with, is missing from the parking spot. With the car gone, Kenny's mom tries to search around, finds nothing, and then she would request help from the mall security. After much persuasion, she would be allowed to view the CCTV footage. The CCTV footage would show that Canny Ong was abducted by a man in her own car, a Malaysian-made Proton Tiara with the license plate of WFN 6871, driven out roughly around 10:50 p.m., breaking through the parking barrier bar. Finally, a police report would be made by Canny Ong's mother, Pearlie, at a police station roughly an hour after the abduction. Well, come to think about it, why after an hour? I don't know, but maybe the mom was just not in acceptance. Such a huge thing had happened, so maybe it took her some time. But yes, a police report was finally made after about an hour of the abduction. About 25 minutes later, around 11:15 p.m., Kenny's car was spotted parked along the roadside in a very deserted area in Kelana Jaya. The car was spotted by a policeman, Lance Corporal Ravichandran, with another police constable while they were on their crime prevention rounds around the area. It needs to be noted that both the policemen were on individual motorcycle and they were not wearing their police uniform because they were doing their rounds undercover. Somewhat 30 minutes later, after surrounding the area, the policemen reach the same location back again and find Kenny's car still parked in the same location. This time, the policeman, Ravichandran, decides to go and check out what is up with his car, so he parks his bike, gets off it, and he walks to the front of Kenny's car. He realizes there's two individuals in the car. On the front passenger seat is Canny Ong, and on the driver's seat, you guessed who? Najib. The police then would request for both of their identification cards, which they gave without any question. The policeman then checks both their ID cards and then requests them to come out of the car so that he can make further search. To this, Najib would refuse and say that they have done nothing wrong, this is his girlfriend, and they've got into a little bit of a problem and they are just discussing it in their car. The policeman said that Canny did look calm and relaxed, but she did try to show some sort of hand signals to him when Najib is not looking or faced towards her. Some of the hand signals and gestures Canny was said to be showing was putting both her hands together, both her palms together, placing it on top of her chest, sort of like pleading. But these were very subtle gestures, so the policeman did not understand exactly what she's trying to convey. To this, he again requested both Canny and Najib to step out of their car so that he can make further searches. At this point, Canny did open the car to, get off her car, which Najib forbade her right away. He said that both these policemen were not policemen. In fact, they were robbers because they were not wearing a police uniform. The policemen both were said to have shown their ID, their police ID to Najib. Still, he would not agree with them and did not come out of the car. Najib, realizing that Canny had been showing some hand signals to the police and the police is starting to suspect him, he locks all the car doors from the driver's side panel. To this, the police tries to forcefully open the car door, which in return, Najib wounds up the car window and speeds off. Realizing that the car is speeding off, the policeman that was investigating takes out his gun and aims and shoots at the front tire of the car. Now the other policeman, which was still on the motorbike, starts to give a chase to the car, followed by Lance Corporal Ravichandran. Unfortunately, both the police would fail to catch up with the car and the car goes lost again. Keep in mind that both Canny Ong and Najib's ID cards is still with the policeman. Sometimes after 12, now 14th of June 2003, the day that she was supposed to fly back to US, and none of this should ever happen. Anyways, back to the story. Her car, Canny's car, was spotted again parked by the roadside in Sungai Way Jaya. Now this is a completely different location from the first one. Cik Amina and some of her relatives were on the way to KLIA. KLIA is Kuala Lumpur International Airport. So they were on their way to the airport to fetch her sister who is coming from a different state. Cik Amina and her relatives were in two different vehicles. She and her brother-in-law was in a car and few of her relatives were in a different vehicle, which is a van. Halfway through their journey, the relatives inside of the van realized that they had to go back to the house because they have left something. So they request Cik Amina to wait somewhere in between the road while they go back, get whatever they've left and come back. So this is where Cik Amina and her brother-in-law, who was driving the car, park right nearby where Canny's car was parked. Cik Amina's brother-in-law, his name is Hamid, so he parks their car about 25 to 30 feet away from Canny's car. Right after they parked, Cik Amina realizes Najib standing outside of Canny's car inspecting his front tires. A couple of minutes after inspecting, Najib walks towards Cik Amina's car asking for a little bit of help. He goes on to request for car jack from Hamid because he needs to change his front tire, which was punctured. At first, Hamid was a little reluctant, but after Najib explains that he needs to drop his wife in the international airport, Hamid decides to help out. Hamid gets the car jack and goes along with Najib to help him change the punctured tire. While this was happening, G.M.C gets out of the car to just look around, and she sees Canny sitting inside of the car. Canny was seen to be relaxed and calm. At this point of time, G.M.C does get a little curious into why Canny does not make any attempt to come out of the car or leave the car. Once Canny spots G.M.C, her relaxed, calm demeanor changed and she started getting a little bit restless. She again tried to show some signals to G.M.C with her eyes, mouth, face, showing signs of fear. She kept on turning her face and her body towards Najib, who was at that point attempting to change the car tire outside of the car. But she abruptly stops the signaling when Najib takes a glance at her, which he did very, very frequently. Sensing something was not right, G.M.C took down the license plate number of Canny's car. The attempt to change the punctured tire does not go well. It's unsuccessful because some of the tools that Hamid had did not work together with Canny's car's tire parts. Later on, Najib is seen driving away with the punctured tire with Canny still inside of that car. G.M.C is such a responsible person that before she goes to the airport to pick up her sister, she goes off her journey to the nearest police station and she makes a report of this incident that just happened using the license plate number that she took off of Canny's car. At 1 a.m., 14th of June 2003, the same day, a man named Azizam bin Ismail arrives at Jalan Kelang Lama. Now this is a completely different road from the first two. So he comes down to Jalan Kelang Lama where there is an ongoing construction of a flyover happening. He drives over to an area under the construction which is walled off the main road to pass urine. After passing urine, Azizam decides to walk around the construction site looking for a piece of wood to support a seat that was broken on his company vehicle, which he was driving at the moment. That's when he spots Canny's car parked under the same construction site. At that time, Azizam thinks that this might be a car belonging to the security guard working on the construction site and continues on finding for a piece of wood. While returning after finding a perfect piece of wood, Azizam noticed that this car looks like it's about to be driven away. While he neared the car even more, he realizes that he sees a figure that looks like a woman lying motionless at the back seat of the car with her face leaned towards the window. He could recognize it as a woman because her breasts were bare at the moment. He also noticed that the front tire of that car is punctured. While he was noticing all this car was seen driven away hastily by a male figure that had a very thinning, balding head. At that time, Azizam thought that driver in the car and the woman might have just been having some casual sex, casual roadside sex, and he left it just as it is. Then Azizam continued his journey back to his office and he left his office about 2 hours later, which would now be about 3 a.m. on the same day. He was driving back on the same road he took earlier, and when he reached the same construction location, he saw Canny's car, but this time parked somewhat 100 meters away from its first location. This time, Azizam stops his vehicle about 3-4 meters at the back of where Canny's car is parked. He leaves his headlights flashing and walks towards Canny's car with the intention of maybe giving them help to change the punctured tire. Upon reaching Canny's car, he realizes that there's no one in the car, so he goes on to opening one of the passenger door, and inside of the car he finds a Nokia phone and a sling bag which he takes together with him. The next day, Azizam was to travel to the island of Penang Penang is a different state in Malaysia. So on the way traveling to Penang, Azizam sells the Nokia phone that he finds inside of Kenny's car, but he keeps the SIM card that was in the phone to himself. And on the 16th of June 2003, Azizam was to travel back from Penang to Kuala Lumpur. So on the way back to Kuala Lumpur, he stops at a gas station and sells the SIM card from the phone that he found inside of Kenny's car. How weird is it? Who sells a used SIM card? And how more weird is it? Who actually buys a SIM card, a used SIM card? Well, there was some dude in the gas station bought that SIM card for 10 Malaysian ringgits. SIM card, like, who buys? Finally, on the 17th of June 2003, it was a Tuesday, about 3 to 4 days after Kenny's abduction, her badly charred, decomposing body was found in a opened, narrow manhole by a construction site manager. Her body was lying on its back and her hands were tight, crossed over her chest. She also had finely folded cloth tightly wounded around her mid-neck. 2 huge tires filled with cement, which was dry, and pieces of plywood and wood was seen covering her body as well. Her body was obviously taken in for autopsy, which revealed she was brutally raped. Traces of semen was found in her vagina. She was strangled and she was also stabbed twice with a very sharp object, and later her body was thrown into the manhole. Then, to hide her body, the tires filled with cement, plywood, and woods were thrown in after. The next day, Najib was seen buying 2 bottles of petrol from the near gas station and returning back to the location where he supposedly hid Kenny's body. He then poured the bottles of petrol into the manhole and started a fire, hoping that it would burn out Kenny's remains. On the 20th of June 2003, Najib was arrested in his house somewhere in between 5 to 6:15 a.m. It was said that he was cowardly hiding under a table. A table? Under a table? Police also apprehended trousers which had bloodstain on them from his wardrobe. Semen trace that was taken from Kenny's body was a straight match to Najib's, and further DNA tests all pinpoint and led straight to Najib. He later goes on to make a full confession with the police and even brings them around to some of the places and location related to his rape and murder. The trial starts on the 15th of September 2003, roughly about 3 months after the abduction and murder of Canny Ong. DPP Salihuddin bin Saidin as the prosecutor in charge of the case, and Muhammad Hanif bin Kafri Abdullah acting as the defense lawyer representing Najib. If found guilty under Section 302 of Malaysian Penal Code, Najib faces a mandatory death penalty. Despite confessing to the crime, Najib pled not guilty, claiming that he was tortured by the police to give a confession. Some points that Najib's defense lawyer argued with was, why didn't Kenny make an attempt to leave the car when it was stopped by the 2 policemen? Why Canny Ong, being a black belt in martial art, did not attempt to flee the car when Najib was outside attempting to change the car tires. And he even sought to undermine Kenny's dignity by saying that Kenny might have consented to having sex with Najib and moved to the cloth that was tied around Canny's neck to be a part of a kinky sex act. And the death of Canny Ong could have been accidental, referring to consensual accidental asphyxia. Now, from the prosecutor's side, these were some of the evidence points and witnesses that was brought forth. The trousers taken from Najib's wardrobe has Canny's DNA all over it. The shirt and the pants that Najib was wearing on the day of Canny's abduction has Canny's bloodstain all over it. The cloth that was found around Canny's neck was the same type of cloth airplane cabin cleaners use to wipe airplane windows, keeping in mind Najib's job as an airplane cabin cleaner. Under witnesses, the policeman Lance Corporal Ravichandran came up and witnessed against Najib. He also presented the ID card that was left with him on the first sighting of Canny's car. Che Amina also stood as a witness against Najib. On the 23rd of February 2005, the Shah Alam High Court found Ahmad Najib bin Aris guilty of rape and murder. All the evidence against Najib was overpowering, and the prosecution had proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Ahmad Najib had indeed raped and murdered Canny Ong. Ahmad Najib was sentenced to death. Additionally, for raping Canny Ong, the High Court Judge Muhammad Idris sentenced Najib to 20 years imprisonment with an additional of 10 strokes of cane. Najib goes on to appeal against his conviction and sentence. But on the 5th of March 2007, the Court of Appeal Malaysia dismissed his appeal, affirming the conviction and sentence based on the evidence against Ahmad Najib. He again appeals to the Federal Court of Malaysia, which is Malaysia's highest court. The appeal was heard before a 5-person bench, but the Federal Court also rejects Najib's appeal on March 2009. This finalizes Najib's conviction and sentence. Well, Najib doesn't stop his appeals just here. Najib goes on to appeal for mercy from the Sultan of Selangor to reduce his death sentence to life imprisonment. But again, the plea would be rejected. On the 23rd of September 2016, about 13 years after the abduction and murder of Canny Ong, the now 40-year-old Ahmad Najib bin Aris was executed by hanging in the Kajang prison. Whew, wasn't this a long one? When I think about it, it is so unfair, and she was so near to flying back to the US and none of this would have happened. But I guess, fate just has a different plan altogether. What happened to Canny Ong was very unfortunate, very, very unfair. She was doing so well in her life. She is married, migrated to the US, so far away from Malaysia, but she had to come back to Malaysia and her death was destined here. When you think about it, life just has a whole different plan. Nothing that we might have ever known. This gets me thinking. Let's hope the conviction and the sentence brought on Najib would have brought Canny's husband and her family some sort of a closure, some sort of a comfort. So this is the crime case, the crime story of Canny Ong. If you guys had stayed tuned until the end, thank you so much. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up and comment what you think about this crime. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Be safe, take care wherever you are, and I will see you all on the next video. Bye.